Ireland have a tough task ahead of them if they want to draw the series. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. We had a decent first test between these two teams. Still a lot of areas I think that both teams can improve on for this second game, and that makes me really excited for Saturday's game. I think both teams are going to step it up a notch, and for Ireland it's about, can they improve more than the Springboks for that test. And that's the crux of it really is, if they both kind of make similar steps forward, then you're expecting pretty much the same results as last week. Both I feel like a lot of good individual performances, especially on the Springboks side of things, but collectively both teams could click certainly better than they did in that first test. So this one is South Africa versus Ireland. It's first versus second in the world, although by the end of the weekend Ireland could definitely slip out of second place with New Zealand breathing down their necks. It is in Kings Park in Durban. It's a 4 p.m. kickoff BST or local time in Ireland, and local time in South Africa it's a 5 p.m. kickoff. Okay, so those are kind of the bare facts. Now let's have a look at the teams. South Africa completely unchanged. We're going to first of all run quickly down each of the teams and then come back and talk about individual players, but not as much as we did in the first test. So starting off, front row, Oxenche, Bongi Banambi and Franz Malherbe. Second row, Eben Etzebeth and Franco Mostart. Back row, Sia Khaleesi, Peter Steph du Toit and Quagga Smith. Halfbacks, Faf de Klerk, Andre Pollard. Left wing, Kurtley Arnse. Centres, Damien de Lende and Jesse Creel. Right wing, Cheslin Colby, and fullback is Willie Leroux. The replacements then, we got Malcolm Marks, Gerhard Steenkamp, Vincent Koch, Salman Morat, Orji Schneemann, Marco van Staden, Grant Williams, and Sasha Feinberg and Gama Zulu. Okay, so on to the Irish 23 then. So starting with the front row, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher and Tyke Furlong. The second row then is Joe McCarthy and James Ryan. Back row, Tyg Byrne, Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris, who takes over the captaincy. Halfbacks, Conor Murray and Jack Crowley. Left wing, James Lowe. Centres, Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose. Right wing, Calvin Nash. And fullback is Jamie Osborne. On the bench then we have Rob Herring, Keane Healy, Finlay Beelum, Ryan Baird, Peter O'Mahony, Caelan Blade, Kieran Frawley and Stuart McCluskey. Okay, so those are our 23s. Now let's have a closer look at the box. So front row, Oxenche, Bongi Banambi and Franz Malherbe went excellently in the first test. Pretty much, some of the scrums were even, but you have to say South Africa were definitely on top in the scrumming department. And then, when the replacements come on, just seem to get even better for them as well. So, Ireland definitely have to get some sort of parity in that scrum on Saturday if they're going to have any chance. But these three guys had fantastic games. Second row then, Eben Etzebeth and Franco Mostart. They got up there, they disrupted the Irish line out very well. Really good games of loose, great carries as well. Both looking for those offloads too. Good impact in the carries. They're in there as well. Decent shifts defensively in terms of getting their tackles in there as well. And also just clearing out rucks and stuff like that as well. So both of them I thought were excellent. Also just coming back to the front row, there were a lot of kind of threats at the breakdown for Ireland to deal with from that front row as well. That's something that Ireland didn't really offer as much in the loose, I think, as these guys as well. Onto the back row then, Peter Steph du Toit, Sia Khaleesi first of all, captain, carried immensely well. There was that one where he basically just bowled over Henshaw, and Henshaw again, not a small guy, so just the power in that from him. But all around, really good game. Peter Steph du Toit, I thought, carried very well. Quagga Smith, good carries and threat at the breakdown as well. I thought as a unit, those guys went really well together. Then onto the halfbacks, Faf de Klerk, putting up some testing box kicks, always there, looking for the snipe, looking for the quick pass, getting in there as well, making sure that, the referee knew about, when Ireland were infringing and stuff like that. Obviously, some referees don't like the scrum half to be too verbal on stuff like that or to be looking for penalties, but you can't be quiet on it either. And then also, looking to go quick when he can, and just those variables to Ireland as well, making sure, that if there's a little chink in the psyche there, he gets under her skin. Then Andre Pollard, thought he ran the back line very well, involved in that very early try for them. Kicking out of hand was excellent. Kicking from the tee, maybe not up to the standard that we're used to from him, especially on some of the pressure kicks that he had, but it didn't have an effect really on the overall game because it looked like both kickers kind of struggled from the tee in that game anyway. But you would expect, you wouldn't expect him to have a poor game from the tee 2 tests in a row, so expecting him to be, closer to 100% from the tee in the second test, which means that Ireland, they've got to think that South Africa aren't going to leave that many points out there from the tee. So they know that the target maybe for them to win is going to be a little bit higher than it was in the first test. Then onto the wings, Curtly Arendse, very lively in the first test. Thought he, finished his try very well. Just that step and that ability to also, not just to step, but to step and to keep his pace at the same time too. There's no real slowdown when he changes direction very suddenly like that you might get with some other wingers. And kick chase was excellent. He was good defensively as well. On the other wing, Cheslin Colby, very similar, very elusive runner. We saw that. Just his quickness of thinking as well for his try, getting there, first of all, realizing that, what was on when Lowe was trying to keep the ball in and arriving at just the right time. Good control on the ball with the kick, and then, having the pace then to finish. And just, overall game, he was a bit of a menace for Ireland. And you saw that South Africa really, they wanted to get out to that width. They knew that's where the space is against Ireland, and Irish kind of, their defense with that kind of umbrella where they try and prevent the balls going wide by, having players on the passing channel, didn't work as well as they maybe, thought it would. And, both Arendse and Colby kind of benefited from that as well. In the centre then, Dealendy and Creel, bringing power, great defensively, and also, with the offloading game there as well, helped them really to make ground up the middle in Ireland, and then sucking those defenders to create that space out at the width as well, that South Africa exploited so well. Willie Leroux, brilliant kicking game from him overall. And, again, we talked about that ability coming into the line and being a second playmaker, kept, the Irish defence guessing. There were a few chances I felt for the Springboks as well, where things didn't quite go, exactly the way they wanted to. But you can see that they're making space against this Irish defence. So the Irish defence has to be a lot better dealing with these guys. Onto the bench then, Malcolm Marks, great to see him back in the test arena. The guy, he comes on, he wins a penalty for his team as well. We know he's a big threat at the breakdown. Then Gerhard Steenkamp and Vincent Koch, they come on and they just, they didn't just keep things going in the scrum, they lifted it up as well. They're pretty sure those guys were on for that penalty try. And Ireland need to find some way to cope with that. They need to fix the scrum. And I think for me, from an Irish perspective, is that, we go maybe in the Six Nations and people will be saying, oh, Ireland's got a pretty decent scrum and blah, blah, blah. But then we'll come up against a team that really does have a decent scrum, and, we have issues. and it never, in a long-term sense, kind of gets fixed. For me, it feels like we need to bring in, more special scrum coaches into the Irish game to make sure that, the technique is there, but also from the point of young players, we're identifying, players who could maybe switch positions at a younger age to go into the front row, etc., and focus on those core skills of, scrummaging, line out, etc. It's great having athletic players, but they need to be able to do the basics of the game as well. And for me, the scrum is one of the key parts of the game. And, I think on the Irish side of things, we can look good in some games, and in others, then we really struggle, and we never seem to fix that in kind of a long-term type of thing. One thing to say, though, is David Humphreys, who's taken over as, I don't know what's like the development guy or wherever, the technical director or something, whatever it's called. He's come out and said that I think from next year, Ireland won't be, none of the Irish provinces will be allowed to bring in kind of star front rows from that are non-Irish qualified as well. So obviously looking at long-term, trying to fix that and bring more Irish guys through. But yeah, the South African guys replacement front row were excellent. Then Solomon Morat and RG Snyman, both going to have impact off the bench. Snyman is, you saw his hit on clubmate Craig Casey, which unfortunately meant Casey misses this one. But just bringing that aggression, and also always a handful when he's carrying the ball too, and seems to take an extra guy to take him out, but still somehow manages to offload the ball. So very dangerous when he's carrying. Marco van Staden then thought he had a decent game too. Really good carries and gets through like a mountain of work as well. Number of tackles the guy puts in. Grant Williams, has that ability to up the pace when he comes on as well. Like Faf de Klerk, very measured sometimes in the way he does things, likes to slow things down and then go quickly, whereas Grant Williams, very quick thinker and just very rapid as well on his feet. Then Sasha Weinberg and Ngamazulu, really talented player to bring off the bench, and he is one of those guys that can change things for you, that can kind of magic up a try out of almost nothing as well. So Ireland definitely going to have to keep an eye on him when he comes on. So that is the Springbok 23. Next then, let's get on to the Ireland one. So Ireland first up, front row, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher and Tyg Furlong. So the change there obviously is there's no Sheehan for this one, due to injury that forced him off at half time in the first test. I was talking about before the game that I would like to see Kelleher starting but Sheehan on the bench, but now we have Kelleher starting, but no Sheehan in the squad. So I'm not as happy with that. I think Kelleher overall is probably a little bit better in terms of the set piece, but around the park, there's no doubt that Sheehan is the better of the two players. Andrew Porter there, starting again, I think speaks more to the issues Ireland have in terms of depth at loose head, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come to the bench. And then Tyg Furlong there, I think if we hadn't had him in the first test, things in the scrum would have been a lot worse than they were. But still, one guy can't just hold the scrum up on his own. So Porter, they've got to have worked with him all through the week on fixing the issues that are happening in the scrum. But even as a unit, they've got to produce better. They've got to get parity in most of the scrums at least. to not kind of lose momentum in the game as they did in the first test. Then the second row, we got Joe McCarthy and James Ryan promoted up from the bench. So Ryan, he does a lot of unseen work. So I expect that Ireland's breakdown to be a little bit cleaner than it was in the first test, just because of the difference, between himself and Byrne in terms of what they bring in that second row. Byrne is your threat, when the opposition have the ball, and Ryan is kind of your rock when you have the ball, in terms of just making sure that guys are cleaned out that need to be and stuff like that, and doing a lot of things that don't necessarily get praised but can still have a big impact on the game. And then Joe McCarthy there, got to see a bit more from him in terms of carrying the loose, because Ireland need more go forward in the second test. Again, if they're going to create that space against South Africa, you need to be punching some holes in their defence and kind of bowing that defence to make sure that there are opportunities elsewhere. Then Ty Byrne moving to 6, Peter Manny dropping down to the bench. So Byrne at 6 means still got a good line option there. And also just that big threat at the breakdown. We haven't seen him being as threatening maybe in the first test, as we might think that he would be. But in this second test, hopefully he can get over the ball a little bit more from an Irish perspective. And then also, I think it's important that he's there, because the South African maul did a lot better than Ireland's maul, and he's one of the guys that, if Ireland are going to stop those mauls, he's one of the guys that's going to be able to get in there and disrupt. Then you got Josh van der Fleer, retained at 7. So he did some decent stuff in the first test. Certainly won at least one turnover that I saw. Want to see a little bit more of him kind of carrying the ball and just offering himself, up in space as well. Caelan Doris was kind of one of the bright lights for Ireland really from the first test. Carried well, but there were times where, because he was doing a lot of carrying, where the box could just put 2 guys on him and stop him dead as well. So that's why Ireland need the other forwards to step up and do their share of the carrying as well, so that South Africa can't just isolate Doris and just double team him. Then Conor Murray coming in for Craig Casey, who obviously didn't make this. So we wish, or we, as if on some kind of company or group, I wish Craig Casey a quick recovery. But I think it was close between the two in terms of who was going to get to start. It's similar at Munster as well. I think Casey, being the coming guy, obviously is the one you'd rather start. But Conor Murray, he's got all that experience. And again, I think he had a dip certainly about 2 or 3 seasons ago, and then improved again. And sped his game up a little bit. So not too worried about him starting there, especially given that he's going to be partnering Jack Crowley anyway. So the two play at Munster. Crowley, really, he's the key for Ireland at the moment, because he's the number 10 that stands well above all of our other options at 10. So we do need Jack to have a good game again if we're going to have any chance to win this one. Wings then, James Lowe. 2 great moments and 2 terrible moments in the first test is how I kind of sum up his performance there. Obviously got to cut the arrows out and bring that point of difference, for the second test. Then centres got Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose. Surprised to see Henshaw actually in this one, because I thought he probably should have gone off for an HIA after that collision with Khaleesi. He didn't, and I'm surprised that we've seen him come back for this, and I thought maybe they'd have a look at him during the week, but seems like he's fine, so that's fine with me. Gary Ringrose, but out for pretty much the entire, at least second half of the season, and now he's coming back. It's about how much fitness does he have in the legs to last as long as he can there in the centres, because we've already had too many injuries from the first test. We can't be dealing with more injuries in the second test as well. Calvin Nash, he did some good things in the first test. Still would have liked to see him get a little bit more involved. He does like to come off his wing to get involved in the game, but I don't think we saw enough of it in the first test. Jamie Osborne then, I thought it was a great debut for him at the back. He really got tested there at full back. He got himself a try as well. Good support running there, and really solid overall, I think, under the high ball as well. So it's good to see a bit of continuity there. I was a bit worried that what might happen was if Henshaw was out, that he might switch to the centres, and then we have somebody else at full back, and then there'll be the whole testing them out again in the second test. So it's nice to see him on there. On the bench then we got Rob Herring. He's, in terms of the three hookers that went on tour, he's easily, I think, the best at set piece. Generally, his line out is really good. He can have blips though as well. I don't think there's any hooker really you can say is always guaranteed to be 100% at their lineouts or wherever. But I think he's a better lineout operator and a better scrummager as well. Cian Healy, very surprised he's still on the bench, because he come on and then he was off, and then I don't know what was going on there. But for me, my question is, why bring three loose heads on tour if you're only really considering two of them for the 23, which seems to be happening here? I would have liked to have seen Cian kind of drop out on this one instead, and then maybe a little bit more of a focus looking to the future, because I don't think Cian Healy, amazing servant for Irish rugby, but he's not the future heading into the next World Cup, or even into next year. I don't think. I'd be surprised if he's involved in next year's Six Nation, and maybe I will be surprised. Finlay Bealham, in terms of our front row options, I'm very happy that he's in there. I would have liked to see him get a start, and I want to see him getting more starts as well, because I think he's certainly in. When Furlong has a bit of a dip in his performance, I think Bealham should be getting starts, so there's more competition between the two. But he's a really good option coming off the bench. He's good involvement as well in that Conor Murray try. Ryan Bird, then I like him coming from the bench, honestly, because he gives you that energy and that drive as well. So that's nice to see. He's obviously covering the second row this time, though, rather than the back rows. He was in 6, or came on in 6 for Peter O'Mahony in the first test, and that's where he's been playing most of his rugby for Leinster as well. But it seems to be covering the second row. And probably Joe McCarthy come off in the first test, but it might be James Ryan that he comes on for. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Peter O'Mahony there then. Sorry, just banged my wedding ring on the table. Peter O'Mahony, covering the back row there. He's the captain. I think he's mature enough not to let the fact that he's on the bench and the captain affect him. He knows it's kind of a caretaker role anyway for him. And I think when he comes on, he's gonna, I like the fact that he's gonna get a chance to come off the bench, because, unlike other players who are maybe like, the likes of Cian Healy, are kind of beyond, I think, being able to impact as much off the bench. I think Peter O'Mahony still has a lot to offer coming off the bench. He's not one of those players where, sometimes when a player gets to a certain part of their career, you think either start them or they're out to 23. But I think Peter O'Mahony can definitely offer something off the bench. Caelan Blade, he's a nice, exciting scrum half. Sometimes has some kind of brain farts and gives away kind of silly things or does some stupid stuff. But that chaos could be something that will benefit Ireland. He's certainly, Conor Murray is certainly more straight-laced in terms of the way he plays the game. So it's definitely going to be something different off the bench. Then Kieran Frawley now is obviously covering 10, but you would imagine that he's covering a multitude of positions as well, especially when you got Stuart McCluskey there. So McCluskey is only going to be really covering centres, but it's nice to see him in there, potentially getting some game time as well. Hopefully he does get some game time, but hopefully it's not one of those ones where they bring him on for the last 5 minutes or something. There's no real chance for him to get his hand on the ball and have an impact on the game. But those are the two 23s. Box completely unchanged and great continuity from them. Ireland, some changes in there, a lot of them injury enforced. Some of the changes though may have some positive impact on them. In terms of the overall team performance, they definitely have to improve. Set piece is going to be key, I think, in this. Ireland, they need to sort that scrum out. They need to get parity early on in the game and not get to that point where, first kind of 4 or 5 scrums, if you give away like 2 or 3 penalties in that, and the others are kind of clean ball for the opposition or whatever, then for the rest of the game you're going to struggle. So Ireland, they need to make sure that it's not in the referee's head that Ireland are causing all the problems at the scrum, and also the lineouts have to be spot on, especially when you get those chances in the opposition 22. You got to be able to hit your man, and it's got to be also Ireland have to watch out for, because we're always doing it, is that one where the guy catches the ball, right, and then the 2 lifters just automatically go in behind them and they obstruct, and then we get blown up on that. So have an eye out for that, because I'm pretty sure Ireland are going to get caught at least once in that. I hope I'm wrong. But it seems to be an automatic thing for a lot of the Irish provinces and the Ireland test team as well. So, if we're doing everything else right in the line out, I hope that's not something that's going to come back to haunt us as well. In terms of the impact from the benches now, Ireland definitely have some exciting players on there. We saw last week from South Africa the first of all the bomb squad come on, and then some other players come on a little bit later. The likes of Feinberg and Gomazuli, I thought, had good impact from the bench. So did Grant Williams too, and obviously that replacement front row just absolutely monstered Ireland in that last scrum as well. And then the likes of Van Staden, etc. From the bench, I thought were very, very good impact from them. Ireland have to have at least that much impact coming from their bench this week, which means that for some of the players, the likes of Caelan Blade, Stuart McCluskey, who aren't maybe, and Rob Herring as well, not involved in that first test, is a good chance for them to maybe put their hands up for to be more involved in match day 23s. I think Peter Manny is the type of guy that feel like he's got something to prove coming off the bench. Cian Healy is my worry there. Again, I absolutely love the guy. He's one of my favourite players of all time, but I just honestly don't understand what they're seeing in Cian Healy in terms of picking him and then not backing him when they're putting him on the field as well. So I'm a bit kind of weirded out by that, honestly. But I think it's gonna be another close one in this one. I think Ireland definitely, there's a lot of room for improvement. South Africa also have room for improvement there. So I think the quality of the overall test is going to go up from the first time. I still think we're going to have that intensity that was there in the first one as well. So just with a little bit more quality from both sides. And we're coming to the prediction now. This is the one time where in my head, generally when I'm doing things, I'm always thinking of don't let your bias come through. Obviously it does in times, because although I know a fair bit about the South African players, because especially the ones that play in the URC, I obviously know more about the Irish players because I watch pretty much every Irish province's every game that they play every season. So I see these guys running around a lot more, whereas it'd be like, 60 to 70% of the South African URC teams. And then a lot of these players are playing like in the Premiership or in Japan as well. So don't see them as much outside of the test arena. So there is a little bit of bias there just because of how much rugby of one set of players I'm watching the others, but I at least try not to let it come through in terms of, in terms of making it seem like I'm rooting for, obviously I'm rooting for Ireland, but not a bias in terms of like, oh, this Irish player is obviously better than blah, blah, blah. Don't do that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the predictions, my bias always comes through. It has to, because like, I'm already thinking that my head is saying that Springboks should win this one. They're world champions. They've won the first test. Yes, there's improvements from both teams, but I think that the Springboks can definitely step it up. And it doesn't feel like, the first game has sated that desire to kind of, I don't feel like South Africa have to prove themselves. They don't have to prove themselves to anyone. Like, they're 4 times world champions. They're back-to-back world champions. And, so I don't feel like there's anything to prove from that point of view. But obviously the players feel like there's something to prove maybe against Ireland, maybe because of the recent record against them or whatever. So I feel like they still have unfinished business and they want a series win. They don't want like a series draw. So my head is saying South Africa are going to win it. My heart is saying that Ireland, provinces haven't gone as well. There just seems to be a little bit wrong in each of the provinces. Some provinces a lot more than others. And, but when they come together as Ireland, they seem to gel a bit better as a team. And my heart is saying that Ireland definitely have the ability to win this second test. And therefore, I'm going to go with my heart instead of my head and say that Ireland are going to win very narrowly in the second test. Okay, so that's that done. First of all, let me know if you're Irish, what you think of the changes, especially, and changes that weren't made as well. The likes of like Cian Healy. I still don't know, like, maybe somebody can explain it to me. But let me know about that, or let me know how do you think that the test is going to go. And also just from the series so far, whether you're Irish, South African or neutral, like has anyone kind of stood out that has surprised you that maybe, you haven't seen as much of them before or whatever, that kind of thing. Just general comments, put them down below there, and we'll have a bit of a chat. But that's the end of that one. I'm going to do a preview now of New Zealand versus England, and then we'll have a review of the Ireland game, because that's the only one that I'm probably going to get to watch live because of working. I'm not going to be able to see the games that are on early in the morning, and then we'll have a review of the weekend probably coming out on Monday as well. So I'll see you guys on those ones.